People who have worked at Goodwill or other thrift stores etc. and processed donations. What's the craziest thing you've found? I found $125 in the front pocket of a kid's coat. Had to be like a 3-4Y. Oh. Next day I found more money in another jacket. About 10 years ago I worked at a chain thrift store. One morning we got a phone call from this gentleman saying, rather calmly, "I think I accidentally donated my mom." Naturally I had no clue what the frick that meant. Turns out the guy donated his mom's ashes, so he left his number in case we found it. The whole back room went on a hunt because it had turned into this competition on who would find his mom first. We found her, phoned him, and he came and picked her up. We thought that was the last of him, until we were processing some donations a few months later and found his mom again. We phoned him because we still had his contact information. His only reply was, "God damn it." He came and got her and we never heard from him after that. Edit. To those asking, she was in a big, heavy, bronze. There's no way that's not an urn. I'm still not convinced the second time was an accident. I do not work at a Goodwill, but I found the DD-214 discharge papers of a World War II veteran at a thrift store, along with original family photos, documents and letters. I was very upset, having recently handled so much paperwork around the death of my grandfather. I knew exactly what I was looking at when I saw the DD-214. I bought all the documents I could put my hands on and started googling the man's name. I tracked down his adult daughter who owned a small business with her husband. I found the email address of the small business and sent her what must have been an alarming email, although I was as cordial as I possibly could be. She got back to me almost immediately. It turned out he had remarried after the marriage to her mother ended. His new wife and her 2 sons pretty much took over the man's life, and the daughter saw very little of her father. At the end of his life they took charge of all of his possessions and cleared out his house without having told her anything. Even though the second wife had died and the 2 sons were not technically blood. She was very angered and upset by this at the time, understandably. I told her she must be the little girl in the baby pictures I had found and I would be glad to send her all these materials. I shipped them out to her via FedEx with tracking and she was so deeply moved. She didn't have any baby pictures with her father. I don't know if I've ever done anything good in my life. I'm sure I have. But I know I did a good thing that week. Internet research skills plus compassion for the win. So why, out of all the stupid things people unbox on YouTube, why isn't there Goodwill donations unboxing? I would rather see a confused employee talk about her latest haul of dildos, bats, samurai swords, and fluids. Worked at a value village a long time ago and a co-worker found cremated ashes. They were in a box that had the funeral home info on it, so our manager contacted them about it. Not me, but an acquaintance from high school found a live hamster. Came with a little cage and all. My mum works in one. I asked her if she could keep an eye out for any skin rugs. The next day she calls me. They had a goat skin donated. Co-worker found a live hand grenade. Bomb squad was called. Be careful when you donate grandpa's S, people. Back in the 90s my mom would buy those blank VHS tapes to record on, and sometimes the Goodwill had some that already had stuff recorded on them, but we would just record over them. I remember one that had a bunch of Simpsons episodes. But on some of them there was prawn. A lot of prawn. I worked for a non-profit for seniors that had a charity shop in it. People often just dropped off boxes of stuff they found in their parents' attic. One box had a bunch of letters. Some of them were from World War II, when the man was stationed at Camp Carson in Colorado, and one of them must have been something they were keeping from an older generation. It was a 1914 letter proposing marriage. It was so romantic. He fell in love with her when they went ice skating together. He included an advertisement for some houses they could buy. They were really nice houses. selling for about $1,500. I found a hidden World War I photo. Got in a crappy picture showing the different knots. It was a seaside town I was working in at the time, so I put the picture out cheap. Few days later it fell off the wall and the frame broke, so I brought it to the back to chuck it out. Found a big military group photo hidden behind. No idea why it was hidden. I used to sweep the parking lot of a Goodwill and they would toss very interesting stuff in the dumpster. Hundreds of books. Like really expensive ones. Leather-bound sets of classical works from the 1920s, early prints of sci-fi novels. I found a nice collectible copy of Dune recently, family Bibles stacked thick with memories. Food dehydrators, paintings, collectible sports memorabilia, super valuable vintage tools and fixtures. Most of it is just stuff that nobody bothered checking the value on before chucking it out, and it's really sad. I found a destroyed collection of old Spalding baseball bats, the oldest being from the 30s. They were left in the dumpster in standing water for days at least. It's sad to see things like that go, maybe because at one point someone loved them very much, and someone else decided that all the care it took to collect these treasures was a waste. Not me, but my aunt. One of the few surviving Enigma machines. The owner passed away and his family dropped it off with a box of newspapers and some memorabilia from the war, etc. My aunt, being a history nut, figured out what it was, got it appraised, worth almost £100k, and looked for the family for 5 months before being able to return it to them. She didn't have a heart to take it under false pretenses. A dead bat, a switchblade, a pocket watch painted with radium, and an 18th century wolf trap. Edit: I almost forgot a late 1800s book on phrenology. I was examining an old manual typewriter someone donated. It had a vinyl carrying case with a zipper pocket on the inside. I opened it and found a manual, the original receipt, and an envelope of Polaroid pictures. The pictures were of several women in lingerie or semi-nude. All looked like they were in their 60s, 70s. At the bottom of the Polaroid was a name and date, covering about a 10-year span. One of the nicer things I came across working that job, better than dealing with the dirty underwear we got on the regular. A sword used by a Japanese officer in World War II. A suitcase full of adult toys. A coin collection worth nearly $2,000 accidentally left in a cupboard that was donated. A photo album of someone's wedding was donated amongst the belongings of the pastor that married the couple after he passed. The bride happened to be someone I went to school with. I tend to sort books at my store, so have found a few odd things in there. Cashier's bookmarks, about $150. A book with carved pages to conceal some jewels and gemstones. A few first edition books on agriculture from the 1800s. Lots of handwritten recipes. Personal letters, and my favorite, a letter sent in the last mail delivery from Hong Kong before the British returned it to China, affixed with every stamp available at the time and mint versions of each of the stamps enclosed. At Goodwill, there was this castle set I was given as a Christmas present when I was 5 that was brought in. The cannon turret actually shot the little plastic rock and all the figures looked like dwarfs. I never knew anyone else ever bought one in my life, so it was nice seeing it again. Great big plastic shopping bag full of cooked spaghetti. No sauce. Probably like 5 kilograms or so. I had a mate who worked in one of the bigger Lifeline stores in Australia. A woman came into the store with 5 large clear plastic storage boxes and asked to donate them. He looked inside of the boxes and it was thousands of beautifully hand-painted Warhammer pieces. He was shocked and asked her why. They were her son's and she couldn't keep them in the house anymore since his death. My friend said he couldn't accept the donation. He said the whole collection was worth a lot of money. She had no idea. He asked her for all her details and asked if he could try to sell it for her. She agreed. After his shift he went home and took photos of everything and posted it online in an Australian Warhammer forum. Within a couple of weeks everything was sold. He called her and she met him at the store. He told her he had sold it to collectors all around Australia who loved her son's work. He handed her roughly $12,000. She cried. He cried. She offered him half. He said no. She told him she would donate his half to a suicide charity in her son's name and his name. He said it was the best thing he had ever done in his life. I work at a thrift store as a donation handler. Gnarliest thing I had seen was a little stack of mattresses left overnight during off hours. They were disgusting, crawling with bugs and riddled in stains of various shades and hues. Nope the frick out of that, called my manager and they brought a forklift out to take them to the trash compactor. Just the other day we had a donor drop off a small crate, like a milk crate kind of thing, chock full of hentai. Just today I found a small, marble one-hitter pipe at the bottom of the donation bin. A few years ago, when there was an earthquake in Mexico City, many people were donating old clothes and stuff for people who were now homeless. I found a pair of pants that were as tall as me, and each leg could fit me inside of it. Edit, I don't live anywhere near Mexico City, but I was helping with the donations. I would have included a picture, but sadly, Dumbus me decided those were not important and I think I deleted them a few months ago. Here are some other things I found: a literal goddamn baby-sized suit, a single glove the size of my head, a shirt made of what seemed to be the same fabric that my couch has. I'm not talking about just the same pattern, it was the literal fabric, and a pair of red overalls that were around the same size as the pants, although they were not as big. So, I worked for a charity. We picked up old clothes etc and sold them in bulk to a thrift chain. When we unloaded the truck, it was common to toss the store employees the bags, and they would catch them before stacking them on racks. Well, one time some idiot put a big chef's knife in a bag of clothes. The store employee caught a garbage bag of clothes, wrapped his arms around it as he caught it, and proceeded to stab himself in the arm. After that, the policies were changed. We had to put the bags at the edge of the truck for them to take off, because our insurance didn't cover us off the truck, and theirs didn't cover them in it. Not me, but a friend's mom found a designer handbag full of vomit and a backpack full of S. Love letters between two people from the late 1800s, multiple suicide letters and one suicide tape, and many diaries. One diary specifically was written by a gay man going to med school in the 70s in San Fran. It spans 10 years and has a first-person account of his feelings the day Harvey Milk was assassinated. Edit. Wow, I posted this right before I fell asleep last night and woke up to tons of messages. I used to process donations at this thrift store, so I was seeing everything first. A lot of times when people die their family members will drop everything off, so we have to sort through and figure out what we can and cannot sell. Personal things like letters and diaries can't be sold, but at the same time they seem so special it's hard to throw them away. When I quit that job I took a giant box of all this personal memorabilia with me and had a bonfire where I read every single letter, note, diary and then burned them. I burned everything except the diary, letters, and suicide tape I mentioned. I have those all sitting in a drawer in my closet. I still sit down and read them sometimes. Another edit, the suicide tape was so disturbing I actually separated the tape from the tape recorder so I couldn't easily play it anymore. It was an hour-long recording of a father saying goodbye to his 3 sons. I wonder how that tape even got donated in the first place. Like, was it an accident? Did the son it was given to die as well and then whoever was donating didn't know what it was? Or did he never actually commit suicide, and over the years he forgot about it, leaving it to get mixed in with his other stuff that eventually got donated? Xbox 360 when they were new, with games. Guy said his son got in a lot of trouble so he just gave it away. A briefcase of like 30 fake plastic model flip phones. Like you would see in a Verizon store back in the day. Used syringe in a fake Coach bag. This is just from a 40-hour stint. My story is not a Goodwill thrift store. But I volunteered to help a friend of a friend clean out her parents' place after both of them had passed away. Mom was a serious pack rat. Payment was I could keep what I wanted. Interesting found items consisted of canned fruit that expired in 1987. Placed on the floor of the garage the day they moved in, never touched again. Complete first edition OZ books. First Barbie still in the original box. Maps of us from the early 1800s. Prototype Star Wars poster from 1977. Dad was a coin collector, so I was constantly finding Morgan silver dollars on the floor. Bag of fabric from 1973. Never used with the receipt still in the bag. Kept this and had some amazing pillows made. Halloween decorations from the 20s and 30s. This was huge for me because I used to collect vintage Halloween stuff, so when I came across 2 unused postcards from 1911 by Ellen Clapsaddle, I kept them and I still have them. Each of them go for about $300. The coolest item found were a pair of original postcards. One for the RMS Olympic and the other for her sister ship RMS Titanic. Didn't work there, but was about 5 years and my mom brought me and my siblings with her to Goodwill. She raised us alone, didn't have a lot of money. This was essentially a school clothes trip. She was just trying to get in and get out. We had strict rules not to ask for a toy or frankly just don't ask for anything. This is a necessity trip only. Naturally that lasted long enough for us to walk through the automatic doors. My brother went one way, my sister another, and I headed straight for an enormous basket of wallets. I had made up my mind that I needed a wallet and the only place I could beg with any hope to get one was second hand. I picked up one, didn't like the pockets. Picked up another, wasn't a fan of zippers. I hated the sound of Velcro so that eliminated many options in the basket. Eventually I brought my carefully scrutinized selection to Mom, who was already overwhelmed by my siblings' finds that she only told me no a few times before she relented. It cost her $2. We loaded our sacks of clothes, and my precious new wallet, into our van and started for home. I remember going through all of the pockets like I was performing a dissection, picturing what I could put here and what was supposed to go there. At some point, I found a slot that was inside of a pocket that was stiff, as if it was never used often. I poked at it enough to separate the fabric, and found a bill inside, intricately folded into a tiny square. Before I even realized exactly what it was, I had ripped it out and held it out over the middle seat in the van, waving frantically and practically bouncing in my seat. Mom. Look. My wallet has money. It was $4.20 bills, total of $80. I'll never forget the stunned yell and absolutely magical, gleeful laugh my mom let out. My siblings and I joined in, and we didn't stop smiling and talking about it the whole way home. That $80 wasn't much at all, but it was everything for us on that day. Mom let me keep a $20. I couldn't even tell you what I spent it on. But I still remember how that wallet smelled. My sis used to work at a Goodwill and she said that people would donate used lingerie all the time. I was working off some probation at the Salvation Army. Going through the boxes I found $1,000 in the pocket of some plaid pants. Found out they were dropped off from a girl whose dad had died. Tried to contact her again but to no avail. I got to keep it and it helped pay my rent for the month. I was really struggling at that time so I was very grateful. My co-worker found a bag of euros at Goodwill. He bought the bag for like $90 and it was worth over $600. Vintage Mickey Mouse gas mask from the Second World War. We were not far from an antiques dealer and I later saw that mask in pride of place, center of the antique shop window. Dildo. My 72-year-old boss found it and came up to me and some co-workers, through the entire store, not concealing it, to ask us what it was because she didn't know how to categorize or price it. was working in a charity shop that helped support cancer patients' treatments. Most people's donations were from the goodness of their hearts, but a very small minority would use the shop as a bin bag drop-off. Fuck them people, they are scum. One time two young enough dudes rock up with 2 small bags of clothes and 2 drawer type bedroom furniture. Bag of clothes was all good, some expensive stuff in them. But each drawer had a mirror super glued to the top of the desk. I'm standing there looking at it, like a fool, wondering what the hell is this all about. Turns out the Garda, Irish police, came in one of the days looking for the furniture and clothes. The 2 lads were drug dealers and they just dropped off the evidence. They were using the drawer to cut up coke. Not me, but my friend worked at Goodwill and he had to clean a dressing room up after a guy went in there with a bunch of ladies' underwear. The guy had smeared essences all over the walls. Edit, a word. I worked at Goodwill on and off for 4 years and saw X-toys, dirty underwear, a box of crickets, a snake, a bag of dog poop that had to sit in our compactor for a whole week, a social security card, a used syringe in a purse. One time a lady walked in with 2 mice on her shoulder, went to the bathroom, came out without them, and left the store. I worked at a Goodwill when I was in high school, nearly 20 years ago, and there was a list of things we were not allowed to accept that make sense but you might not realize, such as kitchen knives, CRT displays, monitors and TVs, anything with fluorescent lights, mattresses, and some other things I can't remember. When we got one of those things but didn't notice in time to turn it away, we didn't really have a set policy on what to do with it. Mostly we'd put them in our dumpster, but sometimes I'd set it aside behind the building and put it in my car after work. It's how I'm the owner of a full-sized sword I still don't know what to do with. The other thing that came in that was weird, but not because the thing itself was weird. If you've donated anything to a Goodwill, you know that they have a kind of drive-through donation area, where you pull into a small pass-through garage with open doors on both sides. Then you and or an employee take your stuff out of your trunk or whatever, then you drive away. One day, a guy pulls up in a rusted out red Trans Am, or it has become a Trans Am in my memory, screeches to a halt, reaches over to his passenger seat, grabs a plastic bag completely full of something, and holds it out through the driver's side window. I walk toward the car, and just as I was about to grab the bag, he looks me straight in the eyes and says, "This is for you," like I was Frodo and this was the One Ring. He drops the bag and I barely catch it as he speeds away without saying another word. So, what was in the bag? It was entirely cassette tapes. The Cure's first single, The Velvet Underground's underrated self-titled album, a Tom Petty B-side collection, 2 records by the Sugar Cubes, The Pretenders, and more. I had just gotten into Talking Heads and David Bowie, my music taste was evolving, but it was still mostly 90s grunge. I'd never heard of the Velvet Underground. So, like with the sword, I set it aside and took it home myself. "It was for me," he said. My car still had a cassette deck, so I started listening to this curated collection of one person's music taste. It was like that cliche of your older brother introducing theme music to you, except I have no idea who this person was. It ended up being exactly what I needed at exactly the right time in my life. I still have that Velvet Underground album displayed on the wall in my home office. I'm a thrift shop junkie and all the people that work at my local ones know me and know that I know what most stuff is worth. I went into a St. Vincent de Paul store and the manager knew me and called me into the office. There was a large box. Not a little jewelry box, like a tackle box sized box, and she opened it and it was full of antique jewelry. Right off the bat I saw a couple of emeralds and some sapphires. She said someone left it and the key was taped to the top of the box. I don't know jewelry but recommended someone I know who's an expert to come look at it. It was worth a fortune. All I can guess is someone's grandma died and they didn't even look in it, they just dropped it off. Not a thrift store, but my job handled a lot of used items. Basically the customer or next of kin would forget what was in their contents and we would find it through cleaning. I reckon the craziest thing would be old World War II era Japanese rifle and katana. Unsure of the validity of course, because research has told me fakes flooded the market, but we found it ticked away in a hidden alcove in their attic with their husband's ashes and old newspapers, so who knows. I've told this story elsewhere on Reddit but need to share it again now. Every once in a while at the shop I used to volunteer at, a large white bag would appear. Always the same kind of white bag. It was full of hand-knitted baby cardigans, hats, gloves, booties. All different shades, expertly made, beautifully folded, with tissue paper on top, and the whole thing smelled of fresh baby powder. Nobody ever saw who brought it in. We'd be through the back sorting stuff, head through when we heard the front door go, and one white bag would be there, with nobody in sight. I've not worked there for years but it still happens, from what I'm told. To this day nobody knows who the mystery knitter is. When I worked at Goodwill, someone donated a wedding favor from my wedding. A fox fur stole, with real fur, shaped like the fox still, but with glass eyes. Nearly gave me a heart attack, lying there, looking at me. 2 dildos made into nunchucks. I worked for a charity shop for a year during my time at university. Once we got a huge donation of clothes in the middle of the night. Like someone just dropped a massive pile of clothing in front of the entry and fricked off. That's not cool, and usually people do it cause they want to get rid of trash cheaply. But damn, this time there were a pair of Gucci men's shoes in there. We all didn't know how to tell if they were fake or real and went to ask a neighbor shoe shop and they were real. And not only real, also very old and in great condition. We sold them on an auction for a lot of money. Oh, I got this one. I worked in fundraising for a non-profit that used to run a thrift store. Despite the fact that the store had been closed for years when I came on staff, people still regularly dumped us outside our door on weekends, and there was an entire terrifying garage of leftover merchandise I spent 5 years, yes, years, slowly sorting through and figuring out how to get rid of. My donation wall of shame included an open box of female condoms, 2 missing, 1 opened, an artificial lower leg that someone's dog had gotten a hold of and chewed most of the foot off, a mattress that someone had either given birth on or something horrible had happened to them, a weekend dump job, we called the cops Jake. Numerous bags of donated clothing where the top few layers were great and the rest were dirty, stinky, ragged, permanently stained, or otherwise unusable. 500, yep, plastic Kleenex box holders at a big box home store that shares initials with the Better Business Bureau had given as part of a bulk donation deal. People are gross. My time to shine. I worked in the e-commerce department for a huge district of Goodwills, and that was wild. We had a room dedicated to items deemed inappropriate or illegal to resell that had a wall floor to ceiling stacked with copies of Mein Kampf, which was more a spectacle than anything, a ton of super illegal taxidermy, sea turtles, elephant foot, leopard pelt. Even museums couldn't accept the sea turtles as donations for any sort of display purposes. Before my time working there, a human skull fragment was found and obviously was handed over to authorities. We were all briefed on what to do if that situation arose again. I worked at a central facility that sorted from hundreds of donation boxes, so I got to see a lot through the years. I'll list a select few. First day I found a Backy light dildo in an old brown leather belt with 50 IS style switch. We got a suite of leather armor. Pretty awesome, a whole roadkill deer. Keep it classy, throw your roadkill in the donation boxes. A Soviet general cap full with badges. A week later. The same cap but with all the badges cut and picked off. Were probably worth more than the cap. A coat with about $5,000 stuffed in all the pockets. One of the employees when I started had secretly behind one of the sorting machines set up a BDSM wall of all the gimp cloths, whips, straps and handcuffs he had found. A full uniform from one of the maximum security prisons nearby complete with ID cards, swiper cards and cuffs. People have no judgment. I can go on. Just got some chores to do. Here are some extras. Gross. Pocket pussy shaped like a thermos. Not clean cool. 1910 military motorbike gloves that were hold horse riding gloves half motorbike gloves. Awkward. Someone donated Thea private nude Polaroids in an album. It dropped out of the sorting machine while I was mentoring a half a dozen work experience girls. So picking up nudie pictures all off the floor was awkward. Additional, we once got about 100 fur coats. It was some kind of fur specialist clothier that decided to pension and just came as the story was told with his sons in Beamers and started unloading them at the facility. Didn't see that last part, but the coats were blocking half the storage for ages. They took so much space however you stored them, and I still wonder how many thrift store patrons buy fur coats. Edited the amount. Trying to recall how many they were, it's a few years ago now. Like $3,000 of cash and old notes. Not me, but a friend used to work at a Goodwill while attending college. She apparently came across guns more than a couple times. I'm not really sure the procedure on how they took care of that, but I remember her telling me one did apparently end up being connected to a crime. My cousin worked in a thrift store and this redneck bee dumped her house trash in the drop-off. This included discarded tampons, dirty diapers, clothes covered in baby S, old panties with stains and rotten food. They called the police and get this. The store had to accept because they can't legally return donations and had to forkfully not just accept it but write her a tax receipt. This lady was told by the cops though it's not cool to do that. She got mad and so for months she would pile trash into her Toyota, added a few kids' toys and drive in the dead of night to the thrift shop drop-off. Finally they filed an illegal dumping case on her and charged her with harassment and a fraud charge. A vibrator that was approximately from the 1950s. I don't work at one, but I do know that my grandma donated a bunch of old suits my great-grandfather wore to the Salvation Army. Turns out when she told my great-grandma what she did when she met back up with her again, she explained to her how she sewed up a bunch of cash in the lining of the jackets and pants. She was a paranoid old woman that had luck for miles though. She was always winning money on bingo and other raffles. Wild how that stuff can be right under your nose and you don't notice it. I'm a books and media donation sorter. Sometimes donations tell sad stories. Half a bottle of gin, tucked away in a box of books in such a way that if you knew it was there you could get it easily, but if you didn't know it was there it would just look like a box of old books. A stack of Saxon algebra textbooks, along with To Train Up a Child and Dare to Discipline. A bunch of books about dealing with divorce, mixed with essential oil MLM materials. A board book about trains, a few Goosebumps titles, and the Communist Manifesto. That one wasn't sad, it was just weird. A rolling suitcase full of Consumer Reports magazines. That one was just demoralizing. I work in a small independent store and we don't have mixed paper recycling, so I had to throw them all in the regular trash when the donor could have recycled them. A book of Grateful Dead sheet music that absolutely reeked of marijuana. One thing that comes in a lot is used copies of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid do-it-yourself book, which is like a journal with places to write and draw. It's always fun to read the favorites lists. The craziest thing ever donated to our store was probably half a dozen urns of dog ashes. A dog breeder died and left us all her stuff. My ex-founder used meth pipe in the drawer of an old dresser. Nazi dominatrix prawn. There were 3 DVDs of the stuff that I had to quickly throw away so the lovely old lady I volunteer with didn't see them. Literally the first day on the job at a Salvation Army I came across several cardboard boxes filled with glassware, all of which were soaked with cat pee. A bag full of urine-soaked clothing from a different person. A pair of women's yoga pants stained with, I assume, period blood. Several bags of actual trash. This is actually quite common since people assume poor folks will take anything, and it's cheaper than going to the dump. A voodoo doll with pins in it. I assume it was some sort of tourist souvenir but still creepy as is. A crate of super rare VHS tapes, including a VHS copy of Aragorn. Granted, my first day was a bit of a special occurrence. Besides the disgusting clothing, though, it was actually a super sick job. Unless it was super valuable, you could take anything you want that came in before it went out front. The coolest thing that ever came in was an assortment of Norwegian vinyl greeting cards, essentially an archaic version of the modern ones that play sound when you open them. Another time we got an Aussie jacket and gator boots. I live in Western Canada so the odds of coming across these are virtually zero, but probably the rarest item was a 1980 Nakimichi Dragon cassette deck, which was in terrible condition and didn't work, unfortunately. My older cousin's story, not mine. She was going through bags of donations and one of the bags was full of X-toys, but that's not even the worst part. The worst part was the fact that they were dirty AF and had clearly not been cleaned after that, and a few other instances they had to change the rules, things that you could donate. Bed bugs are donated all the time. $750 in the pocket of a brand new coat. Anal douche. A nice A-truck. Marijuana. Period panties. Bearskin rug. Nudes from the 1970s. Baby books. Someone straight up took a S in the donation box once. All just your average items. In one day I found a bong, a bubbler, empty bottles of alcohol, a full bottle of tequila, empty cigarette packs, and bags of pills. Whoever donated all this S also donated their backpack which had their nursing ID in it, lol. Brand new Gundam Wing skateboard. In 2019. An urn containing their Auntie Agnes's ashes. Luckily it still had the Undertaker's card tucked in the box, so we tracked the family down and sent her home. Lots of gross and sad stuff. A lot of memories pale next to the stark memories I have of a number of semi-senile 70-plus-year-old ladies who would come in and try on second-hand lingerie, and come out of the dressing rooms to ask opinions from anyone else in the shop. The most unique thing that sticks with me is an odd incoming trickle of rawhide art. Somebody out there was buying those rawhide sticks for dogs, soaking them and reworking them into the shapes of animals, and passing them on to the Goodwill. Had no idea that was a thing people did. Not a worker, but I found a cool painting in a thrift shop once for $20. On the back of it was a list of all the galleries it had been to, mostly Dubai and Middle Eastern countries, as well as some other information I can't remember. Looked up the artist when I got home and his paintings sold for $5,000 to $20,000. Edit. Here's the painting. https://imgur.com gallery r0bicg. I've worked at a Salvation Army for the past 3 months as a donation attendant. These are the highlights: a bag of literally every single X toy you could think of, dildo, vibrator, cage, rabbit, etc. Used lingerie, although this one is fairly common so it doesn't really faze me. A coffee maker with coffee still in it, lol, a box of like maybe 200 CDs, except it was only the case and the CDs were gone. Full cans of beer as part of our non-perishable food donations. Someone once tried to give me like a mouse in a cage. They said they caught it in their house. Fuck man, I'm so close to quitting Lomfeo. What I expected. Dildos. What I got. Dildos. Things filled with S and vomit. Dead bats. Used to work for a homelessness charity shop. We regularly encountered biohazards of various kinds stored inside bags of clothes, which was irritating. Donations of funeral urns were pretty regular and kinda weird emo. Dried fetus stuffed inside of the side pocket of a leather jacket. More than 3 children. I worked at one in an average neighborhood of a large Australian city. While the neighborhood may have been average, the quality of our donations were among the best of the best. I mean, we would have a designer outfit from a world-known designer like Armani nearly every month at least. Our rejects were the quality that you would normally find for sale in most thrift stores. We were that blessed with quality donations. I have seen uniforms for various businesses, a mounted stuffed dog, a folder with a heap of basketball trading cards. I checked, nothing rare or valuable, but the craziest would have to be an overnight carry bag. Open it up, a complete Commodore 64 and 128, with literally 30 or 40 games on disc and or cartridge. Perfect working order, virtually no marks or scratches. I use shop Goodwill. Com all the time. They had a whole Studebaker car on there the other day. Also rooftop AC units like you'd see on a warehouse. Ton of uranium glass, but it goes quick. 15 years ago, when I just graduated high school, I was working in a style local music shop. Someone consigned a Gibson USA R9 Les Paul for $800. I bought it and promptly flipped it on eBay for 5,800 smackaroos. I worked for a youth program ages 13-18 that did not accept donations as we were government funded, but that didn't stop people from leaving garbage bags full of children toys and baby clothes for some reason, and despite the sign stating we do not accept donations, they would leave them out in all weather and suddenly we were stuck with them. So we would rebag them as the bags got covered in cat pee and get torn up. We would often get hair-stained baby clothes, toys that were for some reason half melted, and random expired food. Piss me off every time I rolled in and saw a bunch of garbage bags at the door. Also, went to Valor Village one day and played my usual game of find the weirdest shirt and most obscure band shirt. I found a shirt that said in bold white letters, "I'll buy you a drink when you learn to swallow without gagging and take it in the A without crying." I was baffled that someone saw this shirt and bought it, either for themselves or for a loved one. Someone eventually thought it was appropriate enough to donate to a thrift store. Someone at the thrift store saw it and thought it was appropriate enough to price it and put it on the shelf. Needless to say, I wear that shirt constantly now. JK, that shirt did not leave the store with me. I just want to know what the hell kind of air freshener Goodwill uses, so I make sure to never use it. Whiskey figurines. Many of them were full, but some were not. Of course we had to dispose of them, because alcohol is flammable, and Goodwill does not have a liquor license. I'm sadly pretty late to the game for this one, it seems. But the strangest thing I ever found was actually a bag of uncut emeralds. Most of them were petty small, had inclusions or clarity issues, but still it was a bag of uncut and processed emeralds. Box of very common rocks. Worked at a Goodwill as a materials handler. One day a man with his very pregnant wife roll up to the donation center. There's a nice desk being donated as well as a nice bookshelf. And then a small, white, rectangular cardboard box. I had just been at Planned Parenthood a week earlier with my high school girlfriend when she had been given an identical small, white, rectangular cardboard box. It was a NuvaRing, a form of contraception where a woman inserts some kind of baby preventing ring inside her vagina. That was missing only one of the 3 NuvaRings that came in the introductory package. Suddenly the desk and bookshelf made sense. He was making room for a nursery out of his old study. Also, the very pregnant wife made sense. That being said, I yeeted that S into the trash compactor immediately. We're not doctors, we can't prescribe you with an appropriate form of BC. This is a story from my friend from like a year ago. I don't specifically remember where they worked, but it was a thrift store. Someone trying donating an urn. Pretty okay I guess, but the urn had ashes in it. Baby's ashes. Why would you donate your child's ashes? To a thrift store? My ex-wife's mom worked at Value Village for a decade. The one that sticks out to me was the live grenade they found. Had to call in the bomb squad to get it. Her co-workers tossed it to each other like a baseball. She nearly had a stroke before they got yelled at. Also lots of used needles, dead small animals. The nose propeller thing from a Cessna aircraft. How or why it ended up there I don't know, but it was cool to see. An envelope filled with unknown white powder scared the heck out of me, but no one took my concern seriously, and I never got sick, so that's that. And of course the obligatory bags of dirty socks and underwear, knives in random places, loads of dildos, a few guns and bullets, and enough syringes to fill a small doctor's office. The strangest was a syringe stuck into a fake houseplant. Once sold a lady a cane. After we ring her up, she pulls a fricking 2-foot blade out of it. A relative worked in a second-hand store. Once, 2 years ago, the employees that were receiving the donations approached me and gave me a Game Boy Color that looked like brand new, and told me they didn't have the cables to make it work, so they weren't selling it. I didn't say anything, and got the Game Boy. I'm glad they didn't notice it had batteries, haha. My mom works at Goodwill. I just asked her this question. Her answer: a suitcase full of ex-toys. I help my husband run an antique store. We found 80-year-old still in the bottle perfume inside a picnic basket. Worked as a donation attendant at Goodwill for 6 years. We'd get a lot of dead people's clothes and other dead people items, but clothes creeped me out the most. And the donors often made it clear when that was the case. One time a woman, mid-50s, was donating a ton of her recently deceased mother's clothes. Once I brought all of her bags and she said, "I just want to make sure with you that none of these clothes are going to end up overseas. I've heard you have a program where some unsold or unsellable clothes end up going to people in need overseas, and I just need to make sure that that doesn't happen with any of this stuff, because my mom wouldn't have been okay with that." I grabbed a manager and I didn't hear what he said specifically, but TBH, he probably lied to her because she still donated it all. Honorable mention: very dirty dishes. Like obviously not washed after they were last used, which sometimes looked like it must have been years ago. I work at a thrift store in the Netherlands. Usually I sort books. When fun things come in, the guys usually show me. So like 2 years ago, a red case came in through the garbage dump. We've got an agreement with them. Nice things are put aside for us to pick up and sell. If their employees want anything, they put a note on it and can pick it up for a small amount of money. Anyway, the red case. It contained all adult toys for an SM session. All was properly cleaned. My boss thought it was gross and tossed it in the garbage. My boyfriend, who also works there, and a co-worker took it out of the trash and hid it, just to wait for our boss to forget it. Half a year passes. The case is still hidden and it's finally time to have some fun. We head to the store after hours. BF is manager and has a key, and we start out decorating the office. Drag in a doll from the clothes department and give it a strap-on, butt plugs and the register, things like that. Everything accompanied by little notes, suggesting really naughty things. Our boss came to work the next morning and he found it really funny. Cleaned everything up before customers came in and tossed it in the trash again. Last week boss and BF were cleaning up in the back. Guess what they found? Edit: OMG, thank you kind stranger for my very first award. Edit 2: thank you for the second award, second kind stranger. One time, I ordered a smartwatch that was about $300 on Amazon. It was supposed to have a specific feature according to the description in the manual, which it ended up not having. For some bizarre reason, when it came to returning it, Amazon just told me to keep it and refunded my money. So I decided to donate it to Goodwill so I could have the tax write-off. My state has a refundable tax credit for donating to a charity that serves the working poor, because I knew that was worth more than trying to sell it. I walked in and told the employee I had a smartwatch I wanted to donate and get a receipt for it. She dismissively told me to throw it in the donation bin and just stood there. I told her I really thought she should take possession of it personally, and she just waved me off. I finally asked her if she really wanted me to throw a brand new $300 watch in a box anyone walking by could snatch, and proceeded to show her the receipt and watch. Needless to say, she changed her tune real quick and walked me over to the counter to get me a receipt and take possession of the watch. I got the feeling they don't get donations of brand new, expensive electronics very often. I don't work at one, but I was dropping some stuff off there as employees were bringing things in. I asked them this exact question. They said that people are using the Salvation Army drop-off as their garbage drop-off. They said about 25% of donations are bags of garbage and broken products that curbside garbage pickup won't take. It's sad. They also said they find a lot of ex-toys being donated in the same bags with kids' toys. My friend was working when a man came in with his jellyfish collection. 27 jellyfish in different sizes. Yes, they were in glasses and with what we guess to be formaldehyde. I'm super late to the party, so this will totally get buried, but here we go. A duffel bag full of bones. Large one. We had to call the police, who brought the bones to a coroner to determine if they were human. They ended up not being human, but still. Why? Why do you have a duffel bag full of bones to begin with, and why the hell do you think your local thrift store wants them? Oh man, my time has come. I've worked exclusively in thrift for nearly 8 years, my entire legal working life. On one occasion, someone donated a plastic cup that was still about halfway filled with iced tea. Someone donated a live fawn. Box of live snakes. Butt plug hidden in baby clothes. Handgun. Live grenade. And, finally, the worst. Someone donated their child. These freaking meatheads were peered off because their kid was crying because he was hungry or something, and they whipped around and donated their child to our thrift store. He didn't have shoes or socks and was just in a dirty pair of pajama pants and a shirt. The kid was so young he didn't know his parents' first names. It took ages for the police to figure out who they were and arrest them. In the time he was with us, we bought him pizza, gave him tons of candy, got him new clothes, shoes from our store, and gave him all the toys he could want. I believe that sweet child is now in the custody of a more functional family. Not Goodwill, but my dad gave me a pair of jeans a few years back to take to Goodwill that turned out to be 1933 Levi in mint condition. Reddit helped me identify them and sell them. I sold them to a Japanese guy for $20,000. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment.